So here we are at the end of Genesis 13. We left off in the middle of a paragraph. We left off in the middle of what the Lord was saying to Abram. We were looking at Vasamti and saying that was going to connect back to something else, what and how. Well, it connects to etenenna. I will give it to you and to your descendants. That was an imperfect verb. And here we have Vasamti. Right? Vasamti et zaraka ka'afar ha'aretz. Let's take the verb apart. What's at the end? Well, we have T, which comes from anoki, so it's a 1CS perfect verb ending. And what's at the beginning? We've got vav. So this is vav plus perfect consecutive. So it's tied back to the imperfect verb of Natan in the previous line. I will give it to you, and even though this is perfect, we will translate future because it's tied to etenenna. I will give it to you, and I will... Well, sam is from seem, second vav or yod verbs. They lose a second radical when we make the perfect. And that means to put or to place, but it can also mean to establish. I will establish your seed like the dust of the earth. And often in English, it's best to just translate with make. I will make your seed like the dust of the earth. Asher, which im you call ish. If someone you call, so let's look at that more closely. Nothing at the end, yod at the front, and then we see that shurik there. What is that? Well, this is originally a first vav word, so our lexical form would be yakal, but when we go to the imperfect, that original R1 vav comes back as a shurik. It's really the only one to do that in the Cal. And then we have an A-class theme vowel under the kaf because this is a stative root. So if someone was able, limnot et afar haaretz. So limnot, what do we have there? You see ot at the end. Is that a feminine plural noun or participle? It sure looks like it, but it's not. How come? Well, at the front we have lamed, which is a preposition. And this is an infinitive construct of a so-called final hey root. It's from mana. So if someone were able to count the dust of the earth, and usually when we're not counting people, we use mana rather than pakad, but sometimes you'll see mana for both. Also, zaraka yimaneh. So yimaneh, same root, mana, your seed. What's going on with R1 in yimaneh? Yeah, you've got chirik dagesh kametz, and so that is a nifal. This will be passive. Also, your seed would be counted, right, to a number like the dust of the earth. Then we have kum hitz halek ba'aretz le'orka ula rachba. So at the end of L'orka and Ula Rachba, we have kametz hay with a mapik. And why is the mapik in the hay? I guess you could think of that two ways. One is because we're actually going to pronounce the hay, and the other is because it's the third feminine singular pronominal suffix. But back up to the verb, you look at kum, and that sure looks like the lexical form, which would be an infinitive construct. However, what normally precedes an infinitive construct? Yeah, most of the time it's a preposition. Sometimes it's a time word. Occasionally it's a purpose indicator. And this ain't any of them. Right? The infinitive construct often looks exactly like the imperative second masculine singular, and we are in direct speech, and so the imperative makes sense. So kum hitz halek. Hitz halek is another form that could be three different things if you weren't considering its context. What's the stem? Hit pa'el, pretty hard to miss that. Hit at the front and then patak dagesh. That form would be a perfect 3ms or the infinitive construct or the imperative 2ms. And since we already analyzed kum, we can take this as the imperative 2ms. How does halak differ in the hit pa'el from the kal? Right, halak in the kal, to walk, to go. You think of that more of a from point A to point B. But in the hit pa'el, it's walk about, go around, go to and fro. And these two verbs work together. We can translate them both and say, get up, walk throughout the land. or you might find a translation where you just use one verb in English. So walk about in the land, its length and its breadth, ki laka etenenna. And so he repeats that verb that we saw back in 15c, because to you I will give it. And since he, well, first we have a conjunction up front other than vav, so we don't have the option of a vav plus perfect consecutive. He's also emphasizing to you, and so verb is not in first position, and so he has to go back to the imperfect in order to convey the future. Then after he has said this to Abram, we have a series of verbs that are all Kal preterite 3ms. You see the Vav Patak Dagesh at the front of all of them. You see the Yod having the Dagesh. Vayehal Avram, Vayavo, Vayeshev, Be'elonei, Mamre, Asher Bechavron, Vayiven Sham Mizbeach La Adonai. So there are all these Kal preterite 3ms forms, but none of them look quite like Vayiktol. So let's consider what happened in each case. So Abraham, and you might see in there a noun that you know, ohel, which is tent, and that's the same root. Abraham tented, but what's going on with the form? So it doesn't look like vayiktol at the front because the first radical is a guttural and it's taking a composite shava. Still, we have an E-class vowel there. And it also doesn't look like vayiktol at the second radical because we have a guttural for R2, and that's giving us an A-class vowel instead of an U-class vowel. What does it mean? You might see the noun ohel in there, or at least the root that goes with that noun. And so a common understanding is this simply means that he tented. It is, so maybe he moved his tent. But it's also been proposed that this means that he obtained grazing rights. And you can check halot on that, and it will have a little note about an article by Rabin. Then we have vayavo, which also doesn't look like vayiktol. Words that are second vav and their infinitive is o rather than u, like bo rather than kum, they don't reduce to short o kamates when we have the preterite or the gessive. So you still see bo there, and then you've got kamates under the yod. Why is that? Well, the first radical had to go lead a syllable because all our syllables have to start with consonants. So that pulled it away from the ID badge, from that package of R1 joining the prefix. That means the prefix now is going to be a pretonic open syllable, and it becomes long. And once upon a time in history, the Kal actually had patak in its first syllable. And so this has lengthened before the patak has changed into chirik. So it lengthens to kamates. Vayavo is indeed a Kal. Then we have vayeshev, which also doesn't look like vayiktol. What's going on here? The root is yashav, and that first yod has become seirei, as it were, under the prefix. Now originally this was a first vav word, and when we've got these fientive first vav roots, this is the pattern that we get. We have an E-class theme vowel there, and then we get seirei under the prefix. And then finally we have vayiven. He built there an altar to the Lord. I guess I can fill in the translation. And that also doesn't look like vayiktol. Vayiven is from the root bana, and the final hey is lost when the accent shifts up for the gessive or for the preterite. And so that also affects the vowel in front of R1, and this is the result that we have, vayiven. So in this story, Abram has come back from Egypt. There's been conflict between his shepherds and Lot's shepherds because they went to a place there just wasn't enough space and resource for them with all of the wealth that they took with them from Egypt. They've separated. Lot has gone toward the Jordan Valley, settled close to Sodom. That's going to be a danger signal to the audience. For Abram, it seems like perhaps he has solved a problem. He's solved the problem of conflict between his people and Lot's people. But maybe it's also created a problem. Or what is he going to have for land? Is he going to have enough since he doesn't have the well-watered valley of the Jordan as an option available to him? And so we resolve that with God making promises to him, assuring him that he is going to be given this land. And then we also find that he seems to get grazing rights in another area, and he will be okay there. And again, he gets about the business of worshiping the Lord, as should we all.